Um, yeah, great, amazing. So the first question that we got beforehand, through the form is, during the pandemic, extracurricular activities, e.g. Duke of Edinburgh, have been limited. Are the applications team going to be sympathetic to this? And what other kind of similar extracurriculars could I be looking at? So kind of a question about any advice for online extracurriculars, and maybe you can talk about what you included on your application. So Ella, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think that's completely fine, really. I mean, obviously it's a little bit harder, but there's like plenty still of things that you can watch and read online. And I know a lot of talks and things which you would have like possibly before, like, I don't know, gone to the Royal Institute or something to see. Now you can do those online. Um, I mean, it's a bit harder definitely, but I think if you search it, you'll be able to find some. I think as well a lot of maybe talk societies and things which were previously like members sort of only and now like wider opened. So I know that the Cambridge Union in particular, their talks are now posted and streamed live on YouTube. So those are something which, if there was a particular topic which you were interested in, that you could watch that. So yeah, I would say don't worry. I think the application process will definitely be sort of like adjusted to account for that, and like you're all in the same boat, so it's not that your application is going to look lacking compared to anyone else's.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. It's kind of even the playing field in some ways, in that a lot of people worry, do you have to get like this fancy work experience or internship, and everyone's going to have these connections, but now it's just really like a lot easier to navigate and not to feel overwhelmed by. So yeah, Hannah, do you want to give your answer?
Yeah, so I think at the beginning of the whole session, Naman and Zoe both mentioned that extracurricular activities which are put on your personal statement should always be sort of tailored towards your academic achievements, or something that's making you very like sort of academically interested in Oxford. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. So something like Duke of Ed, of course, is like important and obviously good for the CV and is an interesting element about yourself, but it doesn't necessarily add anything to your Oxbridge application. And there's so many more things, as like Ella just said, which you can do, which have now been sort of translated online, which you can get involved in. I personally have been getting involved in a lot of like mentoring access initiatives, which you can always make a tentative start on before you go to university, as like I did myself. And I think that's a really important thing, because obviously that's all online, like clearly we're on an event here today doing that. And I think that's a really important thing to start, so to try and find your interest. And I think as well, if you get to an interview stage and they ask about your personal statement, what you can do is often elaborate on something that maybe you have done already or are planning to do, to then sort of demonstrate how you're going to be, an interesting candidate, and how that adds to, your academic potential. And so I definitely don't think it's the be all and end all. And to be honest, I can't even remember if I put anything extracurricular on my personal statement, other than the fact that I was like, oh, head girl, and that I did some mentoring. And so, yeah, you really, really won't be disadvantaged.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Though you might have heard the word supercurriculars, the idea that there are academic extracurriculars that you can do. But like, just watching a lecture series is something that's extracurricular because it's not included in what you're taught in school. Or just reading like an article. There's the myth that you kind of have to read all these huge books or something, like the bigger the better. But just finding bite-sized chunks in lots of different areas can often be like a niche that you explore. Rory, do you have anything to add?
I think I basically just agree with what Hannah said. I think just find something about the subject that you're interested in and explore that, maybe with books, lectures, something like that. That's probably more important than something like Duke of Edinburgh.
Yeah, amazing. And Irene, would you like to finish off?
Yeah, kind of coming off Hannah's point, and she said I don't even remember what extracurriculars are put on, because I think in the introduction they talked about the general ratio for the personal statement being about 80-20. So although you would think that it's important in an application to show that you're a real person outside of academia, the Oxbridge personal statements don't really need to be that way. However, there might be a few exceptions. For instance, for medicine, it's quite important to show that you have, you have things going on outside, because often for medical students, it's really important that they have social things going on outside of the lab or lectures, or because it's a very intense course. So for medicine, it's going to be slightly different. But exactly for Oxbridge, it's probably more important to show your interest in the subject rather than saying, I am passionate, have all of these super curricular stuff that really demonstrates that you want to pursue this further.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to finish off that question. Thank you very much. The second one to go on to is from the form, which you guys can keep using. Does applying to an Oxbridge uni take up 2 places on a UCAS application? So this is to do with like the logistics of it, but no, it doesn't. You can only apply to either Oxford or Cambridge, not both, which is where some of the confusion around that comes from. The different way that you apply to Oxford or Cambridge is that it's an earlier process. You'll be starting your personal statement and entrance exams before the rest of the cohort, around the time that medical students start like applying and thinking about it. So yeah, you can just apply to one, and then decisions are usually around January, February the next year, and then you decide whether to accept your offer, and then you have an insurance choice, which is usually a slightly lower entrance requirement that you would put as your second choice, and then you have to reject your other 3, kind of like push aside your 3 out of your 5 choices and just have your insurance and your firm choice. So yeah, and then we can kind of go on to the next one, which I think is a super important question about colleges. So what are some important things to decide in choosing a college, or are we just assigned one? So we have people from lots of different colleges here. So I thought maybe Rory could start, because being a first year, could you tell us about how you chose your college?
Yeah, I chose my college just because I thought it looked nice to start with. Like, it's just a nice big college, and Wadham's the college I go to. It's known for being very like accepting and very LGBT friendly and progressive. So I kind of like that part of it. And you can find most of this stuff out by just like Googling different colleges. But what I wish I'd thought about when I was applying is how rich the colleges are, because I feel like, especially this year, Wadham is a good college, but we're not the richest. And I feel like some of my friends at the richer colleges have got a lot more assistance with COVID related stuff. So if that's a problem, I feel like that's something you should think about. And you can find how rich the colleges are just by Googling it or on Wikipedia. Yeah, I don't really know. I don't really have anything else I would have thought about.
Irene, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think this mostly applies to Cambridge, but I know that some colleges have specific admissions tests or other requirements when you apply, which is different to the degree level admissions. So I know, for instance, sorry, Ella, correct me if I'm wrong, Trinity College has extra admissions requirements. So yeah, so that would definitely be something to check. For me, when I was looking for a college, I really wanted somewhere with green spaces. My college, Oxford, Worcester, is lovely. We have really nice big grounds. Something else to think about might be accommodation. So I know for Oxford, a lot of the colleges can offer you accommodation guaranteed for 3 years of your degree. That might vary college to college. So if that's something that you're concerned about, definitely check that out. And I'd say thirdly, sort of coming off from Rory's point about how much money the college has, I think you may be able to find out some information online about meal prices. So for instance, in first year, I dined in hall at least one meal a day because I didn't have a kitchen in my accommodation. And so it was very useful for me to sort of know what different colleges, what the sort of prices were. And as Rory said, that can really depend on how much money the college has. So some colleges that are more stingy or they don't have dedicated money for food, it can be much more expensive. But again, that's not, you might be able to find out about that online, but not necessarily. So if, you might be able to ask a student directly, for instance, in the different open days, even online, you can probably put a question in a chat if you're comparing different colleges and you might be able to ask a student.
I think that's a great point, as well as open days, looking for the college that you're interested in and then alternative prospectus. If you Google that, it comes up with a student made like insight into the college, maybe specific societies that they have, or yeah, like do they have kitchens provided? What's accommodation like? I wanted somewhere with accommodation covered all 3 years of my degree, just because that was personally important to me. But if you wanted a college that encourages moving out in the third year when you want to be more independent, something to think about too. Hannah?
Yeah, no, just going off both of those points. I think like when I was doing my whole application process and going to open days and that sort of thing, I was always told, and I think like you'll all agree, whatever college you decide, you'll get the same level of tutoring. Like there's no difference between the colleges, which I think obviously to an extent is true in terms of like the education you will receive. It's going to be vary to some extent in terms of where you're put in terms of different colleges that you may be tutored at and the subjects that you choose, that sort of thing. But generally you'll be obviously receiving the same education and that sort of thing. But just as but in terms of like finance, just the general landscape of the college, the history of the college, some sort of basic things that the college stands for, maybe sports, like you may, so there are differences in between colleges, whatever the sort of admissions tutors that you speak to say, there are differences. And so I think definitely just go on college websites and Google sort of what they value. Maybe if you can talk to students, that might be really helpful because they are usually going to give you an honest opinion. Personally, for me, I chose St Hilda's College, because I really didn't want sort of like an intimidating environment with lots of, I don't know, 16th century buildings and, like lots of, the sort of dreamy spires of Oxford. I didn't want that. I really wanted a more modern college. And I also was really interested in the history of St Hilda's because it was a previously all-female college until about 20 years ago. And so that was like really important to me to have like a feminist college. And also, just as an aside, like I had done some just a bit of Googling on who the history department were essentially. And it was just quite interesting because I had read one of the tutor's books, and so I was kind of inclined to go that way because I know that the department was focused on social history, and that's what I was interested in. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that based on tutors. It was just something that was an added factor. But if you're drawn by that too, I would definitely take a look at different colleges of tutors that you may have read. So yeah, essentially just going off Rory and Irene's point.
Amazing. And then finally, Ella, to give the Cambridge perspective.
So I actually didn't visit my college on the open day. I only saw about a couple of like the main big ones. So for me, it was sort of all just looking at like the things online, which I guess will be quite like representative for what this year might have to do. But for me, I looked at location mainly. I knew that I really wanted to be central to Cambridge, and I actually don't have a bike, so I didn't want to have to walk really far like each way to get to lectures. So yeah, that was a main sort of consideration for me. And then I also looked at the size of the college. So Sydney's pretty small. It's probably about a year group of maybe just over 100. So for me, like, coming from school where like you probably, I guess, have around 100 in a year, it didn't seem as scary to sort of go into an environment where it wasn't going to be like, you know, like you lost in like a sea of people. And then, yeah, I just think really like you will be happy wherever, so it's not like a big deal, but there are certain like considerations obviously, but yeah, honestly I just say like just sort of pick any really.
Yeah, definitely. And if you even don't want to pick any, you can make an open application where you're randomly assigned a college instead of picking one on your UCAS application, which some people do vouch for if they really just want like the decision taking out of their hands because it's could be quite a stressful one. But I think something to say is like there's not often people who are like extremely disappointed. There isn't like a hidden bad Oxford College, a hidden good Oxford College. Like it's not really a test this stage. It's more just like having fun looking at the research and figuring out what you enjoy about the idea of accommodation. So right. So we're ending at 45 apparently, so I'll just get through. We have two more questions. Is it easy to find a part-time job in Oxford, Cambridge as a student? So technically, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. It's not encouraged to have a job during the Oxford or Cambridge term time because of the kind of short 8-week term, which is a lot shorter than most universities, which often around 10 to 12, I think. So it's often more encouraged to get a job during the vacations, which are about a month long or up to like 5 or 6 weeks, and a very long vac over the summer. But a lot of people kind of do maybe online tutoring for like a flexible couple hours a week if they want to, and that's fine. But getting like a Saturday job isn't that common or encouraged by tutors. Does anyone have anything they want to like add to that?
Oh sorry.
Oh, there's
Sorry,
someone
hand-
wanting to
sorry.
talk. Oh, I'll just say mine quickly because it's a really short thing. Yeah, and no, like 100%, like that is the case, which was kind of frustrating for me because I don't have much money, so I was really looking forward to, you know, working alongside my degree. However, if you in your college, you can always obviously reach out for bursaries in order to fund that, fund your education if that is necessary. But also a lot of the things in college are student led. So for example, like St Hilda's has a student led bar, and even if you don't have a student led bar, you can get shifts in the bar in the evenings. And we personally also have like a buttery, which, you know, just sells toasties and bits and bobs like that. So you can always get shifts in there, and they usually pay minimum wage. I say usually because I know some colleges don't, but you can earn some sort of money through that, whether it be a couple of shifts a week, and they're usually for about a couple of hours, like in the bar in the evenings before everyone goes out. So hopefully, you know, COVID permitting, you would be able to do that next year or the year after.
Great, thank you. Ella or Irene, I think.
I think I was going to say pretty similar, so no.
Okay. Irene?
Yeah, I do know someone in my college who got a job in a cafe which is really close by to my college, and they did that through talking with their tutor. But that was very special circumstances. That's not really common. However, your tutor may be sympathetic, so that's possible. But again, the academic workload is such that you don't really have time to, you know, go have a really long shift in a restaurant or something, or have something regular that you might do every week, except for the college bars, as Hannah said.
Yeah, great. Okay, so thank you for that. So for the last 5 minutes, we just have kind of again a bit more of a logistical question. Do you think it's worth booking accommodation for the whole year or just for term time? Not sure if Oxbridge unis have this option as their collegiate, like 52 weeks, 41 weeks, but others do. Thank you. So I guess this comes to like whether you are in college accommodation or you're like privately renting in Oxford further out, which is usually if you're in not a first year, if you're in a later year. So a lot of college accommodation is like quite heavily subsidized. So for per term, but I paid like for a year, and it just covers the time that you're like actually in Oxford, so 3 8-week terms. I think it was £1,300 per term for me. But obviously I want to like hedge that that isn't representative of every college. That was a non-ensuite room. That's just like a broad baseline, because I know it's good to have like some idea, and you can check online to see on the prospectuses and websites what your college funds. But does anyone have anything that they want to add to that? Hannah?
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult one because obviously each college sort of varies in terms of the accommodation they offer and also for how many weeks. You can also apply if you don't want to go home during the vacations, especially if you're in college and you don't have like a house. You can apply for VAC res, which basically means that you submit a form. I think it's usually earlier on in the term to say to your sort of domestic bursar in your college to say that you would like to stay for the vacation for X, Y, and Z reasons, whatever reason that is, whether it be like a welfare reason or for academic purposes. And usually they are accepted. And so they will usually sort of somewhat subsidize your vacation residence as well. And I also know of a lot of colleges, including my college, who have college accommodation outside of the actual college grounds. And so, for example, we have an accommodation called Fulford, and that is a longer contract than the college on-site accommodation, which I think that a lot of people, especially in their third years and later years, if you're doing a 4-year degree or medicine, usually opt for, because, you know, lugging your stuff back and forth all the time and you're assimilated into the Oxford environment a lot better. So yeah, I think they're all things to bear in mind. So if you don't want to go home, like there are lots of options not to.
Amazing, thanks. Yeah, that the point about you do have to kind of unpack your stuff, take it home, and then come back every term is like a little bit annoying at first, but you do kind of get used to it, and it's not the biggest deal in the world. I think so. Obviously, we have just like a minute or so left. So not really enough time for another question unless someone wants to like pop a really quick one in the chat or on the form. But yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, guys. I'm going to stop the recording now. I hope that the information was useful. And yeah, thank you. So I'll stop it now.